Since the Z6 III's release, photographers have been saying that this camera isn't very good for landscape photography, but I disagree. Which is why we'll be going on not one, not two, but on 3 shoots to capture wide-angle landscape photography with the Z6 III and the 14-30mm f4s. The last time I was here at Thousand Sets Beach was literal years ago, and honestly, the big reason why I haven't come back is because I felt like there just wasn't much here. The main thing that I'm really going to be focusing on today is that little opening over there, maybe like a cave or something. I really want to use that as like a composition and build everything around it. We have a lot of water coming in here. It's something I really want to incorporate into this landscape. And there were 2 challenges that I had to overcome while on this shoot. The first was the massive amount of people there. I generally don't want people in my landscape photography, so I really made it a point to try and avoid them as much as possible. But second was trying to find a composition that has as many natural elements as possible, and I found this to be even more difficult. Since I originally tried to shoot this image in horizontal orientation, but because the 14-30 is so wide, it caught this cement wall on the left, which I didn't think was very pleasing to look at, which is the biggest reason why I ended up taking this image in vertical orientation. And since I was using the Z6 III, I think this was the right camera for this shoot. Since I was shooting in vertical orientation, I got to use the flip screen out for a better composition, and the waves ended up coming up pretty high on this shoot and covered the tide pools I was at, which helped me capture a handful of shorter exposures around half a second to 1 second. And I ended up landing on this photo in particular, mainly because I liked how the water looked. It gave me plenty of room to showcase the foreground moss and tide pools, which leads your eyes from the bottom of the frame all the way to the cave in the background. But the water itself had a ton of movement and added a dynamic element to the photo. Unfortunately though, I didn't give myself very much time, so this was the only image I got, and the sun was coming down pretty fast, which is when I decided to pack up my bag. Okay, it's really dark, and I'm pretty sure I just got 1 photo out of that. You know what? That's how photography is sometimes. So you may notice this park in a few of my videos where I've done some reviews and stuff, but this is a park that I actually live by, and it is honestly incredible. This is a place I shot at a lot when I was first starting photography, when my photos looked like this. But now we're coming back about 8 years later, giving more testing to the Z6 III and the 14-30. Love this combination, and especially because there is a lot of sycamore trees here. I'm really trying to utilize that as my main subject matter. I think they're really interesting, and they have a lot of unique shapes to them. And the most difficult part about shooting here is that it's a totally chaotic jungle of shrubbery and trees. It's difficult to find a composition to build around with the wide angle, which is why I made it such a priority to single out specific subject matters for my compositions. Once I focused on that, I was able to point out some crucial subject matters like this massive tree with the sun star in the middle. Because the tree was so long, it made for a great image with the wide angle, since I could exaggerate the branches and elongate it, while the sun star in the middle added another element to focus the viewer's eyes on. To make the sun star more pointy, I decided to shoot this image at f13. This next image I took didn't have as defined of a subject matter, but I wanted to showcase a lot of these amazing tree roots at the bottom. So instead of shooting it head on, I thought it looked nice to have the roots on the left and use the branches on the left hand side to help shape the water below. But as I went through the forest, I found this water basin with a small waterfall. This is the most significant subject of the entire park, as it's so unique and can be an amazing sight to see after it rains. I figured with the 14-30 it would be interesting to still showcase the curvature, but also exaggerate the foreground with the vertical orientation. I love this composition, mainly because of how the tree on the top right complements the waterfall, but is also reflected in the foreground. But when you walk past the waterfall, I fell in love with these trees' hanging branches. They had no leaves on them, and the light hit them in a perfect way to make them feel wispy. It gave off a foresty vibe and was a great opportunity to showcase the creek running through the middle. This image was super interesting to edit, and if you can see the unedited version, those highlights we made sure to expose for, but it is pretty bright, but the shadows are quite dark as well. But if you can see the edited version, we bring back those shadows in post, bring down those highlights, And if we look at the dynamic range performance, it is a little bit noisy, and especially with this color noise. I think this is mainly prevalent because this is such a high contrast scenario. The shadows are quite dark, and we brought up the exposure by about 1.5 stops, brought up the shadows by 46, and the highlights by negative 69%. Nice. But as you can see, it is quite a bit of noise, and I think a lot of cameras in this range would probably have very similar results. But I think the Z6 III actually did quite well, given that this is such a high contrast scenario. And this is the last image I took, and honestly, I think this image is okay. I didn't care for the wall on the left hand side. It felt like it blocked off a lot of the creek and isn't very pleasing to look at in general. But I still wanted to take this image because of the second waterfall in the back, along with the tree at the top right.
Huh? You're the only person who can get me out into a forest to meet up with them outside of my guy who sells me cocaine.
We are here literally for one photo, and it's to take an image of this sunset. And I think this is a great opportunity to use pixel shift in particular, 96 megapixel photos. But the thing is, we have to make sure our subject matter is still. And thankfully, this surrounding area doesn't have a ton of movement in it, and we won't have to use ND filters along exposure. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to capture a 96 megapixel image of this sunset behind us. I started shooting around half an hour until the sunset, and the issue with this trail is all the shrubbery in the front. Generally, I use a longer lens just to avoid it, but of course, we only have the 14-30 at our disposal. But the other issue was the immense amount of wind, because I initially thought it'd be a good opportunity to shoot the image with pixel shift to get better dynamic range and more megapixels. Unfortunately though, all the images came out with tons of weird artifacting in the windy areas in particular. I do think it's important to push the limits of these things when getting a new camera, and especially because pixel shift will only work when things are not moving. So it's good to see what exactly that means. I ended up with this photo, which to me is okay. The composition doesn't really have a significant subject matter to build around, but I made do with what I had and tried to incorporate the shrubbery on the bottom right while showcasing the mountains and trails on the top right hand side. And honestly, it was nice having the viewfinder in particular because it gave me a better look at my focus when it was magnified, and for some reason is when I realized that you can turn up the viewfinder brightness. Better late than never, I guess. And we are done shooting, and man, I'm actually really happy with the photos I got today. And in these past couple of shoots in general, I feel like there were so many unique different compositions I was able to get at Sycamore in particular, especially using those trees and the creek in the middle. I think it was just absolutely insane. But yeah guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. Please feel free to let me know what was your favorite photo down in the comment section down below. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.